welcome. If you're new here, this is the Air Hug Community Podcast, and my name is Judy Arazosa. I am your host and virtual cheerleader. I would like to thank you for popping in and giving your time to a little listen here today. And just so you know, our goal here is to gear you up for a better day, a better week, a better month, and a better year. So here on the Air Hug Community, we focus on stories from guests and myself that touch on living well from your 20s all the way up until age 100. And let's not even limit it there. We cover all topics related to physical and emotional health. And a lot of the topics we cover are generated from Q&A sessions I have with my clients and also with conversations that I have with my BFFs on our walks that we love to take to stay connected. Failure, success, perfectionism, progress. One of these things is not like the others. Right. Well, and that's why we're here today and what we're going to talk about. So today we're going to talk about how failure relates to success and progress and what a perfectionist attitude does for progress. So, and also we're going to touch a little bit on people pleasing and obstacles. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but actually it's all tied in together. So let's start with a little quote, shall we? And this is from Tim Ferriss. Trying to make everyone happy, besides being impossible, is the surest way to make yourself miserable. How many of you suffer with being people pleasers? I know that I can fall into that trap quite a bit. And the fact of the matter is that we just can't please everyone. I'm going to give you a couple of stories. So in the early days of when I started my Grateful Fitness business, I would have these in-person sessions, and I would ask, they were small groups, so I would ask everyone about their favorite timing for when to show up. And no matter how I tried, I could not make everyone happy. And it took me many years to realize that if people really wanted to get there, that they would make room in their schedule to be there, whether it was the most convenient time or whether it was only mildly convenient. Now, I'm not holding sessions at like midnight or anything like that. So it was all very reasonable and doable. So here's another little scenario. When I was competing in bodybuilding, of course, the goal was to make the judges pleased with our physique. But honestly, we never knew what a judge would see as the most perfect body on stage. And so I would do my best to get extremely lean, and then my stomach, even in an extremely low body fat, always had something that didn't measure up. So I had 4 kids. So when I was super, super lean, my skin would wrinkle. And when I was just a little bit less than that, I would have a nice little curve there, except for the judges maybe didn't think of that as a nice little curve. So the problem here is, in this case, was pinning my self-worth on my body. And I spent a lot of years doing that, and I think that's why at some point we all have to retire from that whole competitive life and also learn from it. But the big thing is that people will go to great lengths to look perfect and be perfect. And so now we see this on social media, and it's very much just like the competitive stage, except that what they're doing is using things like Photoshop and such to curate that perfect, flawless look. There's some people I see on social media, when I see them in real life, I don't even recognize them. But that's their business. So, I want to talk about the experience I have had from learning from going through the whole competition thing and just learning to get away from, number one, trying to please others and getting away from perfectionism. So it's really taking a lot of what I think is maturity and some actual active work, with the organ between my ears. I've always valued health, but there was also a strong desire to win. Heck, it's a competitive thing. But getting away from that perfectionist mindset was very, very important because it was a miserable time. Years later, this is a pretty vulnerable story I'll share, and I don't even know if I've ever shared it with anyone, but I went to a meditation class on the suggestion of a friend of mine. I'm like, okay, we went through this, and it was kind of like, okay, so I'm like, all right, I'll go back the next week. The next week we went back, and the instructor took us through this exercise where we were to think about our demons, and we had to write them on paper and then set them on fire and let them go. And so I wrote down that I wanted to let go of trying to have the perfect body. And the tears flowed and flowed and flowed. And when I was finally done with that exercise, I felt so much better. And it was something I'll never forget. Now I look at the little bit of cellulite I might have or the curve in my abdomen from being postmenopause, and I celebrate that. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I have wrinkles on my abdomen. It means that I'm at a lean, healthy weight. If I have a little bit of fat on my abdomen, it means, okay, you got a little bit of fat there. It's not taking away from my health. And I smile because I know that I'm working on being healthy. And because of that, I can enjoy my life. I enjoy good food. I enjoy healthy food, but I also get to enjoy wine. But anyways, I digress. Let's move on. A lot of the women I talk to mention that they feel like they're not living up to their potential, and they have a feeling that they need to do so much more. They're always feeling like they're behind or they're late or they just can't get it. And this is not just in fitness, it's in their personal life and their professional life too. And I think it's okay to feel like we can always do better, except if we're striving for a mythical perfect vision, because there's no perfect body, there's no perfect job, and there's no perfect relationship. We have to know that it's just not out there. It's a mythical creature that pretty much we've created in our head or we've bought into from someone else basically selling it to us. Perfection is a myth, and the pursuit of perfection only leaves us feeling less than worthy, and it makes us operate from a place of inferiority. So obviously, the piece that didn't fit in success, failure, progress, and perfection is perfection. So the need to be perfect turns off our growth potential, because growth comes from making mistakes. It comes from taking risks and finding obstacles, and it comes from roadblocks. I often think of Randy Pausch's book, The Last Lecture, and he talks about brick walls. This is probably my favorite chapter. And he says, brick walls are there for a reason. They're obstacles. The obstacles are there to give us an opportunity to become better. We're given a choice with obstacles. We can stay stuck or we can grow and learn. So we can stay stuck or we can find a way to learn how to get over that wall, break through the wall, or go around the wall, right? So what would your days be like if you had a different narrative about obstacles? What if you saw them as a blessing? Obstacles are in our life for a reason. They're there to help us grow. Because what we do when we're trying to get over, through, or around that brick wall is we're learning new skills that are going to help us cope with not only that situation, but future situations. So obstacles are getting us ready for things that we need to do later in life. So we don't give up. We climb them like a Spider-Man on a brick wall, right? So we can use this in all areas of our life. Maybe you signed up for a new business and you realize that it's really hard to get started. Where the heck do customers come from? Or maybe you've committed to an exercise plan that was really great at first, but 3 weeks in, you're so sore. By the way, that's perfectly normal and it's temporary. And it's normal to be discouraged, but that's just an obstacle placed there. And one of the things you can do is talk to your trainer or wherever you got that program from and let them know and work through it, okay? Or maybe you're cutting out sugar in your life and you have cravings. Those cravings are obstacles and they're there for you to learn how to strategize getting by, right? Triggers are obstacles. So, have you ever heard of the book Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar? I highly recommend it if you haven't heard of it. But in this book, Tal talks about the difference between a perfectionist and an optimalist, which is a term that he invented. So let's think of this. Perfection is really just an excuse not to take on a challenge. And I remember when I was interested in running, but I never wanted to run a race because I felt like if I couldn't come in first, what would be the reason for me to run it in the first place? And then I thought, you know what? That is such a freaking perfectionist attitude. I'm not an elite runner. I just wanted to try running out for a while. So I finally did get past that. And I thought, you know what? It would be a great learning experience for me just to try running a race, you know. And so I didn't run a lot of races. I don't think I've run more than 5 organized races in my life. But I did it and I felt good about it. And it was an obstacle that I had to get over. I didn't have to be perfect at it. All I had to do was get to the starting line and try. So, I remember when we were kids and my dad would never, ever be satisfied with our report cards because there was always room for improvement. And it was kind of discouraging to get to the dinner table and let it, we'd have to show our report cards. And I finally remember when I was college and I got a 4.0. And I was really excited to come home and show him. And he was not even that excited. And at first I felt like I had the wind knocked out of my sails. And much later on, I realized that I wasn't getting that 4.0 for him. I was doing it for me. And so what he thought really didn't matter. And I was pleased because I did have to sit there and I thought about it. And I knew that the effort I put in that semester was all for the greater good. It was for my future. I was really, really into my major at the time, which was respiratory care. And I was so excited to actually get it, to get a grasp of it. And so all was not wasted. I learned a lesson there in many ways. So here's the thing about perfection. A lot of perfection basically comes down to trying to control outcomes. And here's a little hint. We can't. We can never control outcomes. The best we can control is our own behavior. So we can control our effort and our attitude. And that is something I like to talk about over and over again with the people I work with. So when we hit a brick wall, we try again, right? We can't control the fact that a brick wall or an obstacle is going to pop up in front of us. We're going to get busy. We're going to get derailed because there's a train in the way and we're going to be late the rest of the day. Well, we can redirect and find a way to go over, through, or around. Now, obviously, we have to wait for the train, but the rest of the day, maybe we can find ways to make up the time. Maybe we're not going to waste so much time on social media. Maybe we're going to take a shorter lunch break. I don't know. Let's think about examples of people who came up against massive obstacles and didn't give up. My favorite two, and you're going to laugh when I tell you why here in a minute, are the Wright brothers and Henry Ford. Okay, so Henry Ford, I think he was told no like 8 times. I don't know, some godly number of times that there would never be a horseless carriage. And the Wright brothers were, they just didn't give up. They kept trying and trying and trying. And I have to say, why are those my 2 favorite? Because if they didn't succeed, I think most of us would never have the pleasure of being able to get to a beach vacation. Okay, so I don't live on the coast of anything. And if I didn't have a car or a plane, I would never be able to take a beach vacation. So I'm really thankful for Henry Ford and the Wright brothers. And I figure if they could do what seemed like impossible, then when I'm coming up against something impossible, I can do it. And you can too. So here's a little tip. Get attached to the journey. Learn to like it better than actually the goal. So not that you don't like the goal, you like the goal, but remember, we can do everything right and we might not hit our goal because we can't control outcomes. But if we learn to enjoy the journey, then we're more likely to be consistent and we're more likely to do better for ourselves. And I typically think of this in terms of fitness programs and nutrition programs because you have to like going to work out. So you need to have a plan where you like showing up. You know, you like who you're working out with, you like who's writing your program, you like your nutrition program, and you have great trust in who's doing it for you or how you're coming about it. So, yeah, there's going to be failures. You know, we're not going to get everything right on the first try. You may get into one of these programs and they may not work for you because your body is like no one else's body in the world. And so it takes a lot of trial and error. But hey, that's okay because failure is our greatest teacher. So if we learn anything, we can learn to welcome failure, to look forward to failure, and to fail fast and move on. So I have to tell you another story about failing fast. And every now and then I'll bring up a golf analogy, and this is one of them. So I've never been an expert golfer, but I do enjoy it as long as the weather's nice. But I have been golfing for a number of years with a few friends, and on the 18th hole of this golf course, there's this water that we have to get over. And it seemed like such an obstacle to get over that water. And I was golfing with a friend of mine, and she said, you know, my son's a pretty good golfer, and he said, Mom, why are you waiting till you get right up next to the water where it's like in your face? Why don't you hit when you're further back? If you fail, you're going to fail forced and get it over with. But there's also a chance that you might get over. And I'm like, oh, I kind of like that. Fail fast, or at least try. And maybe you're going to fail fast, or maybe you're going to actually get over and get to the next spot where maybe you can putt. So I like that. That was my thought about that. So let's go back to that term optimalist. What is it? Okay, so Tal Ben-Shahar in his book Happier coined that phrase, and he said that it's a personality in practice that allows for errors and it embraces challenges. So when we do this, we experience deep happiness and a sense of self-security. And that's what I'm talking about, learning to like the journey, learning to embrace failure, learning to look for failure and be thankful for failure and find the lesson in failure. So the question is, do we want to be a perfectionist or an optimalist? It's all in the expectations, right? A perfectionist expects a perfect timeline. They expect that A plus B equals C, where an optimalist knows that the unexpected can and will occur. It's kind of like Murphy's Law. If anything can go awry, it will, and we should expect it to. Life will throw us curveballs. There will be flukes of nature. All sorts of crazy things will happen to us. And that's okay, because when we expect that they happen, we can deal with it and navigate through them. Now, I'm not saying that we have to be super happy all the time and that all the time life is going to smell great like roses. It's not. But we just have to sit with our discomfort and understand that it's put in our life. And whether it's there for a reason or not, I'm going to tell you what. I have the attitude that it is there for a reason, and it's there for us to learn a lesson. Now, we talked about in a previous episode, does everything happen for a reason? And I left it up to you back in that episode to think about. But you know what? It's episode number 47, and you can go back and listen to it. But in terms of getting through failures and progress, there's a reason that we fail. And we can use it as feedback. Failure is feedback, all right? So, and when we learn not to be so disappointed by failure, okay, look, we can be disappointed at first and sit with it for a while. I'm not saying to ignore the disappointment. Yeah, we are going to be disappointed, but it's okay. Once we get through that and just take a deep breath and then remember that there's a lesson here, we can just keep up the effort to keep going and open our mind to the attitude of finding the lesson in everything, all right? A sign that you are still struggling with perfectionism is when you play defense. So using excuses or blaming, blaming situations on X, Y, or Z. So listen, struggles, insecurities, and obstacles are all feedback. They're just there so that we can examine our situations more closely. They are the little red flags of life that remind us that we need to look at things a different way. All right. So some of you know that I have a clothing business, and I'm not trying to peddle it right now, but I've learned so much through the mentors who are higher up in the company from me. And one of the things they taught me was that you need to have 100 asks, and maybe you're going to get 90 to 99 no's for those 1 to 10 yeses. And so if we haven't asked 100 people if they're interested in the opportunity, then we may miss those golden yeses. And we cannot assume that we know who the yes is going to come from. So basically, you may have to try something 100 times to only get 1 to 10 successes. And it's okay. It's unexpected. One of my friends just went through getting COVID. So she was vaccinated. So unexpected was getting COVID. The perfectionist attitude was that it wouldn't happen to her. But the unexpected was getting the opportunity to get the monoclonal antibody, which she did. She expected to get better right away. But unexpectedly, she felt worse. And then a day later, she, fortunately, got off the couch and was feeling better. But life is full of fortunate and unfortunate situations, expected and unexpected as well. And so we just have to take all of these unexpected situations and understand there's a reason why they happen. Let's learn the lesson and move on. So grit and attitude is something that people who have that optimalist attitude have. So grit and attitude, okay? Adjusting your attitude to make the medicine go down, the medicine of pain, right? Grit plus attitude breeds gratitude, all right? Be grateful for your obstacles and look for the lesson. There's always a lesson. And by the way, grit plus attitude equals gratitude is the motto of our Air Hug training community. So this motto was actually invented by one of our members. We wanted to have a motto that we could all rely on and look back on, a mantra, if you will. And we wanted to put them on a shirt. And so I just asked people to come up with things. And one of our ladies from Texas, shout out to Megan, thank you, Megan, came up with this: grit plus attitude equals gratitude. And really, it's awesome if you think about it. Grit use your grit through the obstacles. Use your attitude to understand that life is not perfect, and if anything can go wrong, it probably will. But that's okay. We learn to be thankful. Thankful for when things go well, and thankful for when they don't. And so that's what I'm talking about today with our one of these things is not like the other. All right? Failure, success, progress, and perfectionism. The one thing we don't need in all of this is perfectionism. We can expect to have failure. We might be lucky and have some successes. We will make progress, especially if we use grit and attitude together and we get grateful. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your listening today. And do me a favor, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star rating and grab a screenshot of it and share it with some of your besties so they too can get the benefits of supporting one another. So I appreciate you. I thank you very much. And that's it for today. Ta-ta for now.